to the channel, and it's official. LA Thieves have signed Scrap, Envoy, and Hydra to join Ghosty. The team is officially out. Here are my thoughts. Starting off, what a roster. This roster's been in the works for a couple of days now. Kind of, I would say a few weeks. It's been leaked here and there, but really the last like 6-7 days, I think it's really started to heat up, and you know, people actually thought this was a possibility, but wow, what a roster. Let's get right into it. So first of all, there's quite a lot to talk about, quite a lot to discuss here, and I'm just gonna give my thoughts overall. I think I want to start off with the actual roster, and then we'll kind of dissect what I think about the league, the competition, and everything like that. But let's start off with the actual roster itself. Wow. I think this roster is going to be incredible, and I think it's one of those rosters where, yes, it's got superstar potential, but I think the ceiling and the floor are going to be so high that I think people are like, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but I just think the floor of this team is going to be so ridiculously high for me. When I look at this team, I'm looking at the consistency. So something I always look at teams is, yes, their ceiling is going to be high, but how high is their floor going to be? Something about the Optic team that scared me a little bit as an Optic fan was that Major 4 run when they were kind of struggling, and that scared me at the time, because I'm like, if your team has a low floor, it doesn't really matter how high your ceiling is, because the floor is always going to be a worry, right? I think it's fair to say that Atlanta FaZe, and especially the trio of Celium, aBeZy, and Simp, have been the best trio we've seen, and also been the best CDL team we've seen, right? Now, if you actually think about how many wins they've had over the years, they haven't had as many wins as people would expect. The reason why they're so dominant, the reason why they're so good and regarded as such good players, is because of how high their floor is. Their floor as a team has been they've been a top 3 team since they've entered, right? Where the other teams have kind of flip-flopped about. It's not about how high their ceiling is, it's about how high their floor is. And I think this team, I think their floor is going to be top 3, of course, like just like the Optic and FaZe team, but I don't know, this team just looks incredible to me. Let's break down the actual roles and kind of go into detail here. So starting off from last year, if we actually just take the trajectory from last year and kind of apply it now, because obviously we don't know how Black Ops 6 is fully going to play out, but we can kind of take it from last year, right? Ghosty. The fact that Ghosty is the only player in this team that probably got the least experience and hasn't won before is like, wow, this guy was so good last year. The fact that he's playing on this team with the lowest experience just goes to show how stacked this roster really is going to be. You've got Envoy back at Thieves, where he thrived, where he won a champs, when he won like many chips. This guy's back home comfortable with the God Squad. Obviously, Scrappy liked something to do with Envoy. There was something there, even though he didn't have the best year. The fact that Scrap still wanted to play with him shows how valuable he was as a team, right? So those are things that we don't consider, things that we don't see. The fact that he still wanted to play with Envoy when he basically had the open book to go anywhere he wants and get any submachine gun that wasn't currently on FaZe or Optic, he basically could do what he want. Him and Hydra had the keys here, and Hydra, like, again, maybe he wanted to play Kismet, like wherever, we don't know, but the fact that they're playing with Envoy just goes to show that the value and stock that Envoy has. I think he had a poor year last year to his standards, and overall I think he had a poor year. However, I rely on him to bounce it back. I think, you know, it was just a one-off year. The game was a weird one, Modern Warfare 3, especially at the start of the year, where it was a lot more AR heavy. And then it got a bit more sub heavy throughout the year, but I just don't think he had his best Call of Duty, to be fair. But yeah, like I said, he's a very, very high ceiling player, and I think this team, you know, he'll be able to perform a bit better, and I think they're relying on it. Then you have the MVP, in my opinion, Hydra. I think he should have won MVP last year. Okay, I say that with a grain of salt. I don't think it's the fact that Simp like robbed him, but I just think for me, Hydra is such a talented player, and when I look at those teams, I feel like Hydra was clear and above the best player in that New York team, where it's really hard to discredit Simp what he did for that FaZe team. But for me, I don't know, I think Hydra would have won my MVP vote. I just feel like he deserved it. He was, for me, the most valuable player of the year when you look at everything and consider it all. But yeah, I think that's fair to give it to Simp anyways. And then we go to Scrap, who for me was the best AR in the year, the most consistent AR, and without Scrap on that Toronto team, they really struggle. For me, the most impressive thing I actually remember was when they beat FaZe at that LAN event, when I think it was a major, that Optic one, major 3, when they beat FaZe and they won that Rio S&D, right? That Karachi before, I remember Scrap single-handedly absolutely taken over, and I was like, wow, this guy is just him, bro. So for me, like, Scrap, Hydra, Ghosty, and Envoy as a squad is just the potential of this team is unbelievable. Hardpoint, I just see them outslaying teams like crazy. They're going to bully teams on the map. When you put these guys against like a Boston, it is going to be a absolute joke, bro. It's going to be a cricket match. These guys are going to put them in the blender, unfortunately, for Boston. I don't know why I'm going straight to Boston. That's not even fair. But anyways, I just think it's going to be unbelievable. In terms of the roles, I've seen people on Twitter talk about, oh, who's going to take the hill and stuff like that. I think you got to remember, man, these guys are playing for hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's not the same as rank play, right? It's not like, oh, I'm not going on the hill. I don't want to be on the hill. No, they're going to find the team dynamic. They're going to find a thing that works, and people adapt their roles. Something I mentioned on Twitter was Dashi. When you look at Optic Dashi and the way Optic were playing, I think this was a big concern for them as well, right? When you looked at that roster, before we saw them actually play, you were like, how are Pred, Dashi, Kenny, and Shotzi gonna work? Because no one really has that hill time, right? They're like, how's it gonna work? But we saw it. Dashi was mainly the hill player. We saw them transition into that kind of role. We let Shotzi play out, we let Pred play his off angles, Kenny be the role filler, and then Dashi kind of pick up the hill time. That was their general strategy, right? Then you look at someone like New York Subliners from Modern Warfare 2, and they had a bit of a different dynamic. They had Kismet more on the objective, right? So I think your team dynamic changes depending on the players you have, and the objective also changes. Something I really liked about Ghosty's game when he was on Optic, I think he was really underrated on Optic, by the way. I think people didn't give him the credit he deserved, because that guy came into a struggling Optic and was undoubtedly one of the best players I've seen in a while for a debut, and he got that Optic team. They played unbelievable. People forget that they, for 2 majors, were the best team in the game. Like, I remember Hook and Shotzi being so good, and Dashi and Ghosty kind of clicking, and for 2 majors they got back-to-back seconds. They were unbelievable, and Ghosty really did play that objective role really well, and I think it's going to be no different this year. I think last year he showed how he can slay out if he needs to, but this year you have Scrap and Hydra. Your slaying is not going to be an issue. You have 2 of the best slayers in the league. You have 2 of the top 5 slayers in the CDL era in your team. You just need Ghosty to do what he does best. Be the role filler. He's an incredibly smart player, very intelligent player. And then you have Envoy. You have 2 of the smartest players in Envoy and Ghosty that can absolutely work around 2 of the best slayers in the game. In terms of team dynamics, like, I think I'm actually... like, the more I'm talking about it, the more I'm excited to see this roster play, because of the pure intelligence and the pure raw natural gun skill we have on this team. It's going to be an incredible sight. I'm an Optic fan. It's going to be a scary roster going up against this team on the main stage. And another thing I noticed this year, when you saw Pred, right, Pred get Shotzi hyped, we saw the best version of Shotzi we've seen in a while. And I think you got to remember, these are real humans, right? Like, they have real emotions and stuff. So imagine like them getting hyped and stuff. It really will make a difference. It really will be a factor. So like Scrappy hyping up Hydra, that is going to be incredible, bro. The site's going to be amazing. They're just going to be at a different level this year, and I'm very scared as a competitive fan. Then we go through to the competition. What do I think about top 3 and stuff like that? I think like so, like, sorry, I think it cut off for a second. So I was saying like this whole, okay, so I've got a few thoughts on this like top 3 league and the overall structure, and I kind of want to talk about this a bit more. So I don't really have more to say about this roster. I just think it's going to be an unbelievable roster, and I just, you know, when the game comes out, we'll talk about it more when we see them perform. But for me, ceiling is going to be insane. I think the matchup's going to be really important. The way they kind of mesh against Optic and FaZe is going to be really interesting. But for me, like, I'm super excited to see this team versus FaZe, bro. That's going to be, for me, like Draza versus his old organization, now having Scrap on there, it's kind of like a cinema story to me. Like, imagine Scrap beating Draza at his old org. It's just like, it's such a cinema story for me. Then you got, bro, Hydra. Oh my god, like, Hydra's been so good, and now I don't know, for me, bro, Hydra and Scrap together are like, I've said this for a while, outside of Optic, they're my 2 favorite players, and having them together is making it really hard for me not to love this team. I'm an Optic fan, I always have been, but I've never ever had a team that I've liked as much as I've liked this team for a competitor, bro. This team is so exciting for me to watch. Even Ghosty and Envoy, bro, they're both ex-Optic players. I love this team on paper. Like, for me, these are like such good, such likable characters as well. Like, I really hope they do well, but not as well as Optic, of course. I still want the green wall to take over. But in terms of, what was I going to say? Yeah, so I had a few thoughts, right? And I want to share with you guys. I'm interested to see what you guys think. So I was thinking about like the overall thing. So I was speaking to Sifu and people, and he was saying that for this league, I think he thinks it's a bad thing. He thinks it's a bad thing. Don't quote me on exactly how he said it or what he said, just kind of what I took from the conversation, that you know, having this as a top 3 league instead of a top 4 league is overall a bad thing. You know, there's less good matchups in the top, and overall it's gonna be a bit more top heavy. Now I absolutely see where he's coming from. I completely see his side of it, but I had a few different things. For me, I think that talent is always going to stack together, right? We've seen it for about a decade now. The best players are always going to find the other best players. So let's get an example from the league, right?
What?
The FaZe trio stay together, so for them, they're going to find a very talented fourth. They're going to find the best fourth available for them. Cool, that's fine. Then we move on to Optic, right? When you had Optic, okay, you had Dashi and Shotzi. They found a combination that they were happy with, and then from there, again, they stacked talent. They didn't go for any new rookie. They did try Ghosty, who was an amazing rookie, but again, after Ghosty, what did they do? They went to stack talent. They went to go through, and they went to get Kenny. They went to get Pred, right? They're always going to be stacking that talent. Pred's a perfect example of somebody that came to the league. Okay, I'm going to start this again. Sorry, let me start this again. The way it works, right, is you have the top teams that stack talent. Your mid-tier teams are going to be kind of like a mix of players. They're going to be players that are from the league that have either started to decline, or they're starting to rise themselves up and they're not quite at their peak yet. So you have that kind of weird mix, right? And then you have some players that have like, they're still at a really good level, but they're not going to reach that top superstar S tier level. Let me give you an example. Someone like Dylan Attach. He's not going to get on an Optics Hexus right now. He's not going to get on an Atlanta FaZe. Why? Because he's a very good player, but they are looking for the new best of the best. They're looking for those Scrappies, you know, the Hydras, the Preds. They're looking for those S tier players, where I think Attach is just a slight level below that. He's unbelievable, and I think he's been great throughout his career. But right now, if you're Optic, you're probably not looking at him as a go-to. You're looking at your top 2, top 3 ARs, trying to get them into the team, right? And then you've got, so those are your mid-tier players. Then you've got other players like someone like a Gwyn, right? Your Gwyn is someone that I look at as similar to like Pred in terms of at Vanguard, Pred was absolutely disgusting. And then he has the potential to go on. Now, you don't want to, you know, go too early. You want to make sure he's quite consistent, he's improving. Maybe after another year of a positive performance, he then gets to the top 4 team. I see someone like Gwyn in the same category, right? I see someone like Gwyn that starts at a lower team at Carolina. He then makes his way up to a mid-tier team. So let's say next year, for me, if Gwyn does amazing next year, and let's just say Envoy maybe has a bad year, right? Let's just play it out in that scenario. I can see Gwyn, if he has an amazing year, then join LA Thieves. You see where I'm coming from? It's kind of like a step. It's kind of like a ladder. So for me, the talent stacks, and whenever you have a new player join the league, if they're really, really talented, most of the time they're going to start off for a team. The general route is going to be like a Sib or like a Pred or like a Gwyn, right? They're going to start off for a good team, play amazing. Next year they move on to a better team, and then next year they go to a top 4 team, start competing for majors. So I think for me, the biggest problem we've seen is just like, if you look at the last few years, right? You had Scrappy join the league, be amazing, and then went to a top 4 team, stay at the top 4 team, be amazing. You had Pred go from a okay mid-tier team to a top tier team. You had the same for Sib, go from a mid-tier team to a top 4 team in New York. FaZe, you had Draza, he had an okay team in Cold War, then he made a good team. So you find these players and they join the top 4 teams, right? But for me, the problem isn't anything that the top 4 team are doing. It's the fact that there's not enough top tier talented players joining the league at the rate that we used to have. If you look at the stage from, I would say, about Cold War, sorry, from MW19 to like, honestly, to like MW2, like every year we were getting like 2 or 3 superstars. Like you were getting your Hydras joining your league, you were getting your Shotsies, your Illies, you were getting your Scraps, you were getting your, who else you were getting, your Preds, your Sibs. You were getting these absolute superstars that had the potential to join the top 4 teams. Where now, if we look at last year, right, you got your Abuza, and Gwyn. They're the only 2 people that I could see potentially join a top 4 team in the next 2 or 3 years. Maybe like a top 5 team. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like they'll be like maybe the 4th best team, right? Like I could definitely see a world where Gwyn and Abuza are the 4th best team in the game. Absolutely. But we're not seeing any like unbelievable raw superstars. We're not seeing like the Scrap level. Like, I don't think that Abuza will be the level of Scrap. I don't think that Gwyn will be the level of Hydra, right? Now, my problem is that even if they're not that level, there's not any players. Like I think even the players underneath Abuza and Gwyn, I think they're in a level of their own, and then it goes to like 04 and Estrium and stuff like that. But I think there's a little bit of a gap there. Like I really do believe that Gwyn and Abuza are a little bit above them, and then there's quite a big gap. So for me, the gap is getting bigger and bigger simply because of the talent pool coming up, and we don't have like I'm surprised like this year going into the next year, right? There's not one superstar, young, cracked 18-year-olds joining the league that were like, wow, this guy's going to be the new Shotzi. This guy's going to be the new Simp. And that's where the problem starts for me. I think we need to find a way, especially Activision, of really, really prioritizing challenges, man. Because right now, if I'm a Call of Duty 17-year-old player and I'm like, okay, I'm disgusting. Like, in what world do you not look at Warzone as number one? Like, honestly, if you're looking at this as a career, like, if it's not pure passion and you're looking at it as a career as well, like financially, like, for me, Warzone makes more sense. Unless you're guaranteed to be on a really good team, like, why would you not try and compete in Warzone where the money is just going to be substantially more? You have a lot higher chance of earning money consistently in Warzone than you do in the CDL because of how limited the spaces are. Warzone had 50 teams or 40 teams, I believe. Let's just say 40, right? They had 40 teams at World Series. That's 3 players a team. That's 120 spots for World Series of Warzone. The CDL has 12 teams for 4. That's 48 players. That is literally a third of it, right? So there's so much more room in Warzone. And that's where I think we're getting a bit of a disconnect. You've got these players like Shifty, Soka, Biffle. Now, I'm not saying they're going to come over and transfer. They could, you know, play in the CDL. But my point is, who knows if Shifty couldn't be a top CDL player, right? But the fact that Warzone has so much more financial gain to it right now, I think is a threat and a competition to the CDL, and I don't think we're leveraging it enough. I think overall the Activision and the league, they need to be leveraging like the CDL and the Warzone together and like growing them both together. And I just really do believe the challenger scene's in a lot of danger right now. I just feel like there's so many things they can do to improve it. We'll go through that in a separate video, but I just want to give my thoughts on that because a lot of people are talking about this now, the league being a top 3 league, and I'm like, for me, I don't blame the top 10 teams. That talent's always going to stack. But my point is, like, look at the 4th best team in the league, right? There should be a 4th best team right now with the remaining players that should be good enough, by the way. Like, the fact that Sib is not playing with Kleenex, I think such a, like, missed opportunity. Bro, Sib and Kleenex, that's a top 4 team already, bro. For me, if you get Sib and Kleenex as a 2, you're guaranteed to top 4 for me. It's not even close. Like, you compete there. If you're Sib and Kleenex and you're going up against a FaZe or an Optic, bro, I give you a chance. Like, I think you have a good 2 right there. You find 2 other players that complement them. Kleenex and Kismet, that is unbelievable. Bro, for me, Skies, Sib, Kleenex, Kismet. That is a disgusting team. That for me is the 4th best team, and it's not miles below them. It's below the top 3 for sure, but it's not miles below. I think the top 3 are S, I think they're A. But we're okay with that. We can deal with that. I think the only difference now compared to last year is last year we had, I think FaZe and Optic were S tier, and I think Thieves and I think Toronto and New York were A tier. Where this year I think it will be Optic, FaZe and LAT at S tier, and then the 4th team will be A tier. That's the only difference. I think the 3rd team is now gone to S tier, the 4th team stays at A tier. So it's not too different to last year. That's kind of my argument to it, if the 4th team is still good and still competitive. But yeah, those are my thoughts overall. Insane, incredible, disgusting roster. I think it's going to be amazing. I don't see this team getting less than 2 chips, unfortunately, for the competition. I mean, it's a scary roster. It's a scary roster, but it's an exciting one. I'm very, very excited for Black Ops 6. The matchup's going to be incredible. YouTube, you guys know the drill. We're going to be covering CDL content every single day on the channel. So drop a like, subscribe to the channel. This is going to be more of a podcast style of channel. You guys can watch it in the car, on your way to work, wherever you want. We will have daily discussion type videos for you guys to chill, listen to, get your thoughts down below in the comments. I'm super excited to hear what you guys are thinking. I'll catch you guys for another one tomorrow. Peace.